Welcome back to another episode of Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line podcast. My name is Monica Crawford, owner of 50 Fierce and Fit, author of the Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line book, which is what this podcast is based off of. Today we have Vince on the podcast. I'm excited to have him because he's another law enforcement officer and small business owner himself. So, Vince, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, go for it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, my name's Vince Finochio. I've been a police officer for 14 years and in the central Pennsylvania. And I have a police newsletter called Welcome to the Street. That's kind of my side business. And that's keeping me real busy. So
Awesome. Cool. Well, as I start every podcast, and you can interpret this however you like, what does it mean to you to thrive inside the thin blue line?
all right, yeah. So I think first, a lot of times the definition of what that even is can get kind of cloudy, right? So I've always thought of the thin blue line as that line of police officers in this case, that separates the good versus evil or the order and chaos. I've never really considered that area, that thin blue line, to be like some sort of secret code or brotherhood. And I know the public perceives it that way sometimes, which is why I like to kind of start with that when I talk about what that does mean to me. The public, I think, sees it, especially with the flags and the stickers and things like that. They see it as like this little secret club, and we'll do anything we can to take care of each other and things like that. Whereas I see it as we're just that line between good and evil. So, but then to thrive within it, I think one thing I'm big on is if you find your purpose and then you just stay grounded in that and your professionalism. So that can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people, but maintaining your physical and mental wellness, which is something that you're big on, leading by example and mentoring others in the departments that you work for instead of, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but instead of like that competition and that putting each other down. And then, building a life outside of law enforcement is also very important. And I think that even though that has nothing to do with the thin blue line per se, I think that does help you on your career path or while you're thriving in that organization or position. And then just constant self-improvement and holding yourself accountable. I think those are all great ways um, that you could thrive in the thin blue line, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great perspective because you hit on, well, let's define it first. Because the thin blue line and the way I use it can be literal or figurative. As far as if you're in law enforcement, what does that mean? But also, if you're outside law enforcement, it's like, or even in or out, it's more of like, how are you thriving in your life and career is the bigger picture message versus it being career specific because it applies to everybody. And the principles in the book apply to everybody as far as toxic work environment, chronic stress, those challenges within a work environment, in addition to what your actual job is, right? The brotherhood, that's interesting that you mentioned the public perception of it. And not I haven't had anybody bring into the public perception of what the thin blue line might mean to them and how that differs.
Yeah, I think it started, well, not started, but as you know, in the 14 years that I've been in law enforcement, we've gone through these times of turmoil between in relationships with the public. For example, most of them have been nationwide sort of crisis. Like I worked through the Ferguson effect, and then obviously the George Floyd stuff, and um, I think obviously that was a good example of a literal thin blue line because now you have these lines, the riot lines and things like that, right? Where you're trying to protect the businesses and the innocent people from kind of the chaos that came of those things. But when you started to have the arguments between, especially when like Black Lives Matter was the thing, you would have the public who support us, and I truly appreciate this, so I don't want it to be taken the wrong way, but blue lives matter, right? And then people were equating that flag with the thin blue line on it. And they're like, well, that's the Blue Lives Matter flag, you know? So that's when I first started to recognize that there's a segment of the public, whether negative or positive, because in the example example I just gave was the positive. You know, it was people trying to support the police. But there's also the negative side of that. That's when I first started to realize that, oh, well, I think they see it differently than maybe, at least I do. And I'm not sure about other police officers, but yeah, that was when I first noticed it for sure. The Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter argument, it was like obviously dumb, but also yeah, or I'm sorry, a dumb argument to have, not a dumb idea. Uh, and that's when I was like, oh wait, I think they're interpreting it differently than I do.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up and something to be cognizant of too, because we serve the public, so therefore we have to be aware of perhaps what that public sentiment is, even though it doesn't necessarily change what we do. It's just it's like being a business owner and knowing who your audience is. I like it like that's what I equate it to is like you're a cop. You have to know what your audience is, which we naturally do that when we respond to calls anyways, depending on if you're dealing with a neighbor dispute or you're dealing with like a domestic report, you're gonna interact with those people very differently just because it's a different set of circumstances. So that's cool. The one thing that I like that you said earlier was finding your purpose and staying grounded. So how do you feel like your life led you, if you will, to finding your purpose, if that is law enforcement, or if it's even something else and like a different spin on that.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I guess once you figure out your, everybody talks about your why, I guess, which I don't really, I'm not great at defining that. So, uh, but yeah, I think that once you find that it's what you want to do or not do. So like you were saying about maybe it's not law enforcement or maybe it is. And then I also think that sometimes law enforcement professionals question that sometimes, but that maybe it wasn't the job itself or the career choice. Because I talk to a lot of officers now, especially that are sort of looking to leave or have left. Um, I mean, even you're sort of one of them, right? So you've left and we talk so about policing still. Um, and for me personally, like there were times where I thought about hanging it up and doing something else. And then once I sort of started to refocus the on different aspects of the job, like more importantly, the training aspects and the education and the making myself and those around me that'll listen the best police officers that I can. So that's sort of my new goal and new thing. And now I have this almost a rejuvenated interest in the career as well. Not that I ever lost it completely, but there was a part of me at one point that was um, unsure if it would be some if it was uh, I at first 100% 25 years, you know, no questions asked, likely in the same department. Well, then that changed because I've switched departments a couple of times. So then as you get older and get through life, you kind of realize that, well, maybe that wasn't even a realistic expectation at first. And now, you know, so then once you do that, oh, well, definitely going to stay in law enforcement. And then again, as time goes on, you may change your mind a couple of times. But I actually think that maybe there's people that left at this point that could have that didn't necessarily have to leave to find that purpose that they were looking for, but because it happened to me. Like I think that I at first I thought I needed to leave, and now I'm happy with what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's a great thing that you brought up because I think there's more cops specifically right now, and it probably applies to first responders in general, who are teetering on, do I stay? Do I go? I know I'm miserable. I've kind of lost my why. I've lost my purpose. I'm not maybe in some cases not being treated very well within your department. Could be different for everybody. It could just be a, hey, I'm tired of dealing with all the trauma on the street type of thing.
Mhm.
Whatever it is that has you sliding down that slippery slope of maybe mental and physical wellness not being where it needs to be. That was the determining factor for me is when my mental and physical health was going. I was like, it's time to make a change. It's time to make a decision on what's gonna fix that. But I like that you have the perspective of I like you. recognized that maybe you were thinking about getting out, chose not to. And then now by focusing on yourself, you've been able to, as you said, rejuvenate your passion for the job.
Yeah, yeah, definitely focusing on myself and then honestly, so I met Devonte Richardson, who I do the Welcome to the Street newsletter with. I met him in an off-duty entrepreneur group, which I think you're also a part of.
Hmm.
So, and I was in that group specifically to find something else to do, or just see what else was out there, what other people were doing. Hey, what side hustles do you have? So even if you're not going to leave law enforcement, what other fun thing can you do on the side that makes some money and you're interested in? And then I met him, and he was doing the newsletter already, and then I started kind of helping out with it and stuff like that. And we've grown and pivoted and transitioned a lot since then. Um, and now, yeah, like I said, now it's about my education and training levels are just growing and growing. And then I'm helping other people do that too, whether it's through what we're doing or connections with other people. Um, we talked like real quick before the recording started about just all these like interesting people from all over the country that I'm meeting that are teaching these classes that it's like, wow, that is like high value training that I wouldn't have had access to had number one, I not started doing um, the newsletter, but also because of the internet, because of social media and stuff, I'm able to kind of link up with these people that I would have never met before, like you.
Yeah, I'm hearing so many great things in this. Um, and I didn't know that was your like origin story. I didn't know that was how you guys got together. So that's cool. I learned something.
Yeah, he yeah,
Um,
he posted in there like looking for somebody to help him because he kind of already had that side thing going. And I was like, "What do you got?" And then we met, and the rest is history, I guess.
That's funny. So for those of people who don't know, there's a Facebook group called Off Duty Entrepreneur. A guy who I've met and gone to a conference with personally. His name's Nate Mitchell. He's a good dude. He created that group to help cops and first responders find a side hustle or business for whatever purpose, whether they want some extra income or they want to transition out, whether it's retirement or just move on to something else. He created that group to be a platform or jumping off point for that. So that's cool because that's literally what it was for. You met your business partner in there. That's
Right.
awesome. That's really cool. I wanted to go back and revisit, if you don't mind talking through what happened in your thought process when you got to a point with your first agency of thinking, if this is the right timeline, this may not be the right timeline, of maybe thinking of getting out of law enforcement, or how that was your transition to the next agency and how your perspective shifted through all that.
Okay. Yeah. So that wasn't when I was thinking about getting out. In fact, I wasn't even trying to leave per se. An opportunity came up where there was another department testing, and some other people I knew were testing for it. And I'm like, well, let me take the test, see what happens. And at the time, um, it was I guess you could call it a nicer area, like to work in, nicer community. Um, and I didn't know much about the department per se, but the area I knew was nice. And then it was the department I was in, just sort of, low morale, understaffed, very busy, which I enjoyed the police work aspect of that, the busy and the, responding to the calls that kind of hold your interest and stuff. Uh but then, there's a pay aspect to it as you get older. Like when you're 22 and you come out of the academy and you get a job where it's like, oh, I work for this department, things are bumping. We go to a lot of hot calls. It's fun. I got a great group of people I'm working with. Even though we were all miserable, we were all like cool with each other. um, it was more of an administrative thing. And then as you get older and you buy a house and have a family and stuff like that, you're like, oh, well, an extra 40 grand sounds nice, you know. Um, and then there's the retirement aspect because you hit a certain age and you can leave. And if you were making good money through your career, you can retire comfortably. And so, yeah, so it was more of um, a financial decision and a personal life choice as far as like, because of the additional income. and the area that I could move to, um, the personal life became better instead of being stuck sort of in a, you can move out to a nice community, buy a bigger house, you're in a good school district, all the stuff that doesn't have anything to do with policing. It's just what you would do if you made the same amount of money not being a cop. But so that was that decision. That didn't really have anything to do with wanting to leave the job completely.
Okay, cool. I mean, that makes complete sense. And I think it's good to highlight, like you said, I like that you said that maybe it wasn't a realistic expectation to stay with the same department for 25 years, because that's where my head was. When I started with my former department, it was like, cool, like I'm set. Like I'm set for life. This is the last application I'm ever going to do. Forget these 25-page background packets that require everything minus a blood test. Like never going to have to do this again. And then, of course, 3.5 years later, I was like, ooh, this is not working.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you bring that up to, I think, to show other people that there's other opportunities out there that can help you advance, whether it's, like you said, pay benefits, working towards more of like a supporting a family versus a lot of people get into departments and they're like, well, I'm 5 years in, I'm stuck now because if I transfer somewhere else, X, Y, and Z, insert all of these negatives versus it is possible to transfer departments and make it make sense for you.
Yeah, and those concerns are valid if you're at a certain point. Like for example, if I would have gotten hired with the department that I'm with now and didn't want to go or and didn't want to continue, or let's just say didn't like that department, I may be more inclined to opt to not continue policing than I would be to go and start over at 30. Well, right, I'll be 37. So because then you're looking at before you can collect a pension, you're looking at 25 years from 37, and you're getting older than you want to be when you retire. So unless you have something else going on, uh, and you're not going to collect that pension until years later, it's probably not achievable as far as from a financial standpoint. So I understand those concerns too. I likely wouldn't start over now, but I don't know. You never know where life's going to take you, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's good to talk about all those things just to show there's definitely real challenges there and real concerns there, but I think it at least gives people the idea that there may be other opportunities
Yeah,
that can fit. It's not just, hey, I'm stuck where I'm at.
yeah, because there definitely are people that feel stuck. And also that's not good for the profession either. And I do feel for that. Like whenever I'm pushing for these, when I'm pushing for the things I push for, which is physical fitness, education, training, being kind of the best police officer you can be because you're here. And then you're trying to tell somebody who doesn't want to be there but feels they have to be to do that stuff. Then you're like, well, now I'm just stuck with this guy who doesn't, or girl who doesn't want to be here. you know, so it's definitely a double-edged sword. And I understand how there's challenges as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that as well too. It's frustrating. You're trying to lift other people and they're just like, I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but you got to work beside them, and law enforcement's unique in the sense that when you have like an underperformer, it doesn't affect me at all how many like tickets you write or arrests you make. I don't care. Like it doesn't. It might affect the community a little bit, maybe depending on your community structure and stuff. But to me personally, not at all. However, in law enforcement, you are also sort of reliant on those same people for your safety and the safety of the peers that care, which could come in all shapes and sizes. It could come from the physical fitness aspect, or it could just come from like lack of giving a shit, like whatever. Yeah, it could be very unsafe just because of the attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. One other thing I would be curious to know, and I'm sure this would help others, is if you could share your process in recognizing when you got to that point where you were unsure whether you were going to stay or leave law enforcement, where you were at mentally, and then also how you worked, where your turning point was, where you worked through that, and how you got to where, like, the headspace that you're in now.
Yeah, so I think every career or law enforcement career, I think at least has these like hills and valleys. So you go through these little ruts, and some people might call it disgruntled or whatever, or maybe their morale's just low in the department, which would be the case in the in the first one I worked for. Um, but I ended up I did buy so I bought another business that's not Welcome to the Street. It's a like little ice cream store that my family runs on the side. So, and I don't do a lot with that anymore, but when I first bought it, it was pretty time consuming and but I liked it. I really liked the business aspect of it and sort of like what, in that entrepreneur group, when people talk about when they made that transition, they really liked the business side of things. Like, so I, um, so I liked doing it. I liked running the business. I'm like, boy, I could really see myself like just doing business stuff. I'll do this, maybe I'll buy another one, which is why I was in the group because I'm like, well, if I can find another thing or two to uh, stick my head in, maybe I can get out and just do that. So it was more of a that was really cool to me than it was I hate law enforcement. Um, and I think it was just a little bit of burnout as well. You know, I'm just like, I'm sick of doing this and uh well, then whenever I started doing the training and education newsletter stuff, I think honestly it was just doing more of it rejuvenated my interest in law enforcement. And now I'm kind of like all in again. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that'll ever change again or not. It probably will. You know, as maybe like when you hit the 20-year mark, maybe I'll hit another valley. I'm not sure, but but I know that over the years there's been a few of those where so it's kind of hard for me to answer the how I came out of it part, other than I just found myself interested in it again because of the other things that I was doing.
Yes. So I love that. I'm keying in with multiple people who I've spoken with, and I worked through this myself, but I recognize how I could have used this when I was in the middle of my storm, is that having things outside of law enforcement is what creates that balance, is what keeps you essentially keeps your cup full so that you can give back to others because you're prioritizing you in some way in your own interests and what you enjoy doing. So the welcome to the street and that newsletter that you have going on, it reignited your passion essentially for training and education so that you're helping yourself off duty essentially, but then it translates to on duty as well as building your business and your personal brand too.
Yeah, right. And I think like talking to officers that I don't work with every day too was helpful because um I guess like sort of similar problems, but also just like different mindsets and because you're kind of stuck when you're stuck with the same group for a certain amount of time, you tend to think then that, oh, well, this is just what policing is. And then you kind of forget like number one, where you came from because I worked for other agencies, or two, what else is out there. Um, yeah, and I think doing that helped a lot too, because then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There's a lot of things in this job that I didn't even consider. Like I don't want to call it like you think that you that kind of hit you kind of think that you got to the point where you're good. Like I know everything I need to know, and this is the tactic we use, and it's just how it is, or this is the policy that this department has, and it's just how it is. There's no way that can ever it's never going to change, and this and that. And then you start talking to other people, and you're like, oh wait, there's a lot of law enforcement perspectives, and there's a lot of different departments do different things, and there's um, and with the various laws in different places and case law updates and stuff that we talk about all the time on our show. Yeah, it just gives you like a different way to do things. These trainings that I've been going to, these guys that we talked about earlier, give you a different um, kind of different ideas on how you can police. So you're like, oh, well, I'm going to try that on my shift now. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to look for this kind of car, and I'm going to try to get into this kind of crime. And that's pretty. And then that's just it's like I said, just rejuvenates the interest. That's all.
Yes, I'm resonating with a lot of that. Coming from, and this might be an overgeneralized assumption, so somebody please inform me if this is not correct. Um, in my experience of what I've seen, especially those somewhat larger departments that run their own academies that keep all their training in-house, it's very easy for that bubble to close in of like, this is how we do things. This is the only way I know how to do things. And it was funny because I came from other law enforcement experience before I went to the municipal agency with their own academy, whereas my husband started at our agency at 21 and didn't know anything else. And so it was funny. I was telling him, I was like, honey, it's a lot. I mean, I'm in rural Oklahoma, so you have a myriad spectrum of law enforcement from your city that has like the chief and one officer to Tulsa and Oklahoma City and everything in between. So I was like, just wait, like your eyeballs are gonna open real wide when you start
Yeah,
working out these rural counties. And there was one city he went to. He's like, we had the chief, and he came out, and he was in his New Balances and a hoodie, and was just like, "How you doing?" I was
yeah,
like, "Yes, that's a
yeah. We have that's like that around here too. We have not where I work now, but close enough to me where I'm familiar with it is like, you know, 3 or 4 officer departments and really small towns and stuff like that. And but yeah, because and I didn't come from nowhere. I went to a municipal police academy, but it's for like the whole state. So you go and then you get certified and then you start applying for jobs or whatever. We don't have to be sponsored here. So that's how I did it.
yeah." That's really cool. So what I'm hearing, I've got three credos within this podcast and my book. One is we rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. So essentially, you did that because you took your own interest as far as building Welcome to the Street and learning more to better yourself. And so now you're using all of that to help other people. Just
Right. Yeah. Constant. Yeah. I think just like the self improvement helps a lot. And then as I'm doing it, then I'm passing that information on, and then I'm meeting people where they're like kind of bouncing information back to me, and then I'm going the other direction with it and using it for the newsletter or who knows what. Um, so yeah, it's been a real valuable thing for me and my career and the people around me that care. Like there's always going to be the ones that, you know, think that what you're doing's dumb or whatever. Yeah, I don't even know how to explain it without that. But you just ignore them and move on. It's kind of like the like when you work around people that you don't align with, you just let them do them, but you just don't adopt their mindset. You just focus on raising the bar for everybody that wants to come up with you, but don't lower yourself to them.
yes. Raise the bar for everybody who wants to come up with you. I like that. My dogs, they haven't barked all morning. And of course, now I'm recording something and they're losing their mind.
I haven't really heard them barking, but I just see them moving around a little
Oh, well, okay.
bit.
Good. Well, then my speaker's not picking up him barking at the door.
Yeah.
Cool. The other thing I love, and I've seen this myself too within my business, the second credo is you're one decision away from a totally different life, which manifests itself too is you're like, hey, I'm gonna hop in this Facebook group and see what there is to see, and then you end up creating your own business opportunity out of it, and essentially your own self-care out of it too, because it's just something you enjoy doing. But it's also opened the doors for, like you said, of the networking side of things. Because I know for me, if I'd stayed in my own agency, I would be still stuck in that bubble, which my goal was to be out in the training division. And they kept telling me everything that I tried to do, their answer was no. So I got out and I created my own opportunities. And now I'm able to train and speak and teach the way I always wanted to, which is full circle for me. But you paved your own way in that sense too.
Right. Yeah. And I'm fortunate where like I work in a department that gives me a lot of latitude, like nothing to do with the newsletter at all, but like if I wanted to do if I wanted to focus on something at work, I could likely take that to my administration and be like, hey, this is what I want to do. Um, uh, and and I think that they would probably allow it. It's a smaller place, but it's something that's kind of why I think it is the way that it is because you don't have this real deep administration that does all of the training stuff and the policy stuff and whatever. So you can have a little bit of say so in some of those things, which is nice. So I have it both with the newsletter and with my actual police career, which is cool. So I don't have a lot of the no like you experienced. Um, Unfortunately for you, I guess. That was I
No,
read
that's
your book,
good.
so I got a pretty good picture of what you went through there and stuff like that. But
Yeah, no, that's good. My story is there to highlight and call out some of those negative things, but that's not to say there aren't places where the positive things exist are. And that's why I like having the
Right.
conversation of somebody else who's worked through their own burnout essentially and has stayed in the profession because I'm not here to tell everybody, hey, you need to get out. Like, it's not why I'm here. Um, so that's why I was curious to hear your story of like, yeah, I went through a dip, but here's how I came out. And, other people can be like, oh, like I have these other things that I could possibly doing. Maybe I'm just stuck in the mud, focused on being a cop 24/7, and I need to focus my attention elsewhere.
Right. And give yourself opportunities that you might not have. Again, if I wanted to get more into the training space and stuff like that, um, I could do a lot of those things through what I'm doing now with the newsletter and stuff. And then my department would allow me probably to go and teach courses or whatever. I'm not doing that now, but it's just something that in the future, back of my mind, like, hey, maybe the law enforcement training and education space is somewhere that I'll stay, even if I stay, as an officer as well. Do better.
Well, and I think if you have an agency, um, department brass admin, insert the fill in the blank, that has more of that growth-minded mindset or outlook, ultimately you doing what you're doing is bringing positive attention to them. If they're like, oh, hey, like I have no idea what this agency is, but I know who Vince is because of Welcome to the Street, and oh, that's where he works. That's cool. I want to go work with him because he can help me and develop me, and he knows all this information, and he'd be a great guy to work with. So essentially, that brings positive light back to you and your department too.
Right. Yeah. And a big part of it too, just for me, as far as why I want to even focus on that side of law enforcement is it's not just new guys, but that is one category where instead of complaining about them, it's like, oh, we're just getting all these people taking the test that, because nobody wants to do this job anymore and this and that. And then you hire, this isn't really happening where I work, but I know it's happening everywhere else is, or not everywhere, but you know what I mean? I've heard stories, what I'm saying, where like that's who's getting hired. So you have two options. You can either put them down continuously and make them suck even more, or you can try your best to like, help train and educate and make them the best that they can be. And who knows what they might turn into. I've seen like really, really awful police officers at first turn into like the best cops I've ever seen. Um, and then also stop complaining about the people around you that have been on the job for a long time and give them, maybe they'll read something or maybe they'll come to one of your classes and they'll see and they'll really like it and then they'll just change their perspective altogether. Um, just one quick example from what you just pointed out. I met a guy, I met Cameron from Yellowstone Narcotics. He does, okay, you know what I'm talking about?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
So I took his online course, his online undercover social media investigations course. And I talk to him all the time now. A great dude, really helpful, whatever. And I was like, hey, what do you think about coming to PA and teaching your classes? And he's like, yeah. He's like, how about these dates? And I'm like, okay, let me check. I get back to my area and I'm like, hey, I want this guy to come to our area and teach these classes. He's going to come for 4 days. He's going to teach two classes. They're like, set it up. So now we got this dude from Montana who teaches these really awesome courses that we would have had no access to before, is going to fly to Pennsylvania at some point and put on his well, two of his 2 day courses in a row. It's gonna be, I think it's gonna be awesome. So I'm really excited about it. But that's the plan. But yeah, just like you said, never would have happened if it wasn't for all the networking and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's cool to see. I mean, you're working to help elevate what's at your agency as far as training and who's being brought in. Do you have a formal position at the agency currently or no?
Now just patrol. Yeah,
Yeah, I hate saying just patrol. So I was
I
like,
know,
I'll let
but
you
that's
fill in the
what.
blank. You're not just patrol.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so I mean, even without saying, well, I'm in the training division, you're
right.
working patrol and your agency values you enough to be like, hey, like we trust his perspective, his opinion. He found something really cool. Like, let's get it set up because what does it hurt? What does it hurt? It doesn't hurt
Yeah,
anything to bring somebody outside training in, just give people other perspectives and learn from other experts in the field.
yeah. My whole area, they value all the departments in the area value training a good bit anyway. And then, like I said, especially the course I took online, is just a perspective and a way to investigate these online crimes-ish, because then it ends up being in person and online, but it's a way to investigate these that I've never heard of before. And then you have this guy and he even says that in his course. He's like, yeah, no one's doing this. Like, cops aren't doing this. So here I am teaching it, trying to spread the message. Um, and and yeah, and then he gives you all the background behind it and ways to do it. And it's just something I never even heard of. And I doubt anybody else that's going to come to the in-person class has ever heard of. So it'll be a whole new tool for um, at least my area, or maybe my state in general, that we haven't been using because we weren't taught it by anybody until now.
Yeah, that's the stuff looking back when I was still sworn that I wish I had. When I always enjoyed learning new things and just having my eyeballs open to new things because it's like, wow, if I would have known that on this stop at this time, we could have had X, Y, and Z if I had just had this extra information. And a great example of that, I had Heidi Chance on my podcast, and she's a human trafficking expert. And I'm like, in 8 years of law enforcement, I had 1 8 hour a day on human trafficking because our human trafficking units are in Tulsa or Oklahoma City. So if you're not local to them or you don't know somebody you can call with those units, you really don't have anything or you don't know much. And she puts the information out even to civilians, to the community of like, here's what to look for in a human trafficking situation if you're seeing these couple things. And she gave out some basic examples of like what to look for as a patrol officer and brought up something I hadn't even considered. Like it makes sense once you hear it, but it's one of those things you don't think of yourself. She's like, look for hotel receipts. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Like
Mhm.
my brain just exploded. I'm like, yes, that makes so much sense, but at the time you're not thinking of that because you're not looking for it.
Right. Yeah. And just these different ways to interview and talk to people, whether it's roadside or whether it's just somebody you're giving a ride to, like because their car broke down, you start picking their brain, like who they know, what they're doing in the area and stuff like that. And they might not be involved in the criminal activity at all, but they could give you some really good insight on what's going on around you. Uh, and then, with these, like to your human trafficking training point, I've had several trainings on it. Like you said, mostly these little 8 hour blocks or whatever. But then, and I relate this to interdiction too. I talked to that guy I was telling you about earlier from Oklahoma. I've had the training. I don't know how to apply it to my day-to-day patrol activities. And that's where these new trainings are coming in, and these new people that are teaching these trainings are teaching it in a different way, where they're like, well, and there's some really really great trainings out there for this stuff where, like, yeah, this is like he posted on his Facebook group the other day, him sitting on the side of the road explaining like how he picks his spot and then what kind of cars he starts to look for. And you're like, wow, yeah, the in-person training where they explain this stuff to you is great, but then like seeing it in real time and having someone teach you how to apply it is even better. And the human trafficking thing, same thing. I've had a bunch of trainings, don't know how to apply it until you link up with somebody really really good at it, and they're like, well, hey, take what you learned, and then here's how you can apply it. And you're like, oh, all right. And I think that's where police training kind of skips over that last part sometimes, is the actual application.
Yep. 100%. That's like sitting in the academy and sucking down policy and state statute and going, I'm never going to remember this until I actually use it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could talk all day about the academy because I see these videos online where it's like first day, the recruits are here their first day, and it's like some dude like in a hat, like they're all in formation and he's checking them, make sure their tie's straight or whatever. And I'm like, that's fine, except for they're all gonna leave that 19 week or 21 week or whatever academy, and they're not gonna know case law. So, maybe we should focus on the right things here. But like I said, that's like a 3 hour conversation by itself.
Yeah, yeah. Nailed it for sure. Well, when I originally asked you what it means to thrive inside the thin blue line, you also mentioned taking care of your health.
Mhm.
So what all are you doing to take care of your health and how do you help others to do the same?
So I'm not like the epitome of somebody. I would never say, hey, if you want to be like physically fit and healthy, you should follow me. Uh, I do fine, like for myself, and I think that I think I'm above average maybe in that category, but I would never try to say that I am you sit here on a show like this and you start talking about what all these other people should do, and they're like, well, that guy doesn't look like he's in great shape, or whatever. Um, but I but I do work out several times a week, and I've switched recently, not recently, but since I've kind of gotten more into this kind of stuff, I've into more of functional, like the functional fitness, which you and I have definitely talked about before. Um, there's not a whole lot of value to your time if you're just going in there and kind of like meandering around the gym doing a couple curls and stuff like that. So I try to do like the more explosive movements or the heavier lifts, and then a little bit of running, like stuff that that relates well to work. And then yeah, diet wise, I've always been kind of decent, but I also don't shy away from like you're gonna hate it if all you do is eat like chicken and rice. So I try to have a good combination there, but my main thing is jujitsu. I've been doing it for like 10 years. I love it. I go like twice a week. I think it relates really well to the job. I encourage all officers to do it. Just because I think that if you get good at that more like grappling based defensive tactics trainings and stuff, that you can subdue people and control people better without having to use quite as much force. And also, it builds the confidence that you need. And so does strength training, I think, but it builds the confidence that you need to not have to use force that you wouldn't otherwise need to use if you like kind of just had some control techniques. Like you ever watch those videos where three guys are hitting the same guy with a baton, and you're like, and it's not working. You're like, if one dude there just knew how to hit like a double leg and take this guy down, we'd be in great shape. And it doesn't look as bad on video, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you get into the BJJ and immediately the one video comes to mind where somebody got away because they're like grabbing for a shirt sleeve or something and they just like rip out of it and take off and you're like, "No, they had them on the ground and now they're running away. What happened?"
Right. Yeah, because they can't control them on the ground. Like we broke down a video on the podcast that we had a clip in it of it on the newsletter, and then we talked about it a little bit on the show. But it was basically this officer did a great job initially, but he was so worried about the taser that he had this great like back control, and but he still had the taser in his one hand, and all he would have had to have done is like put that taser away and just take control of that one arm. And instead the guy got up and the taser didn't work and he ran off. And yeah, it's just so when you see videos like that, you're like, man, he was so close, so close to having it. Now, I don't expect everything to go perfect in a scramble situation like that. Like even a good jujitsu guy could have lost control, but I would have at least liked to have seen a video where, okay, he did the best he could, lost control, and he didn't have the taser in his hand. But whenever I see the video and I'm like, well, the only reason he lost control is because he couldn't grab him because the taser was still in his hand. I'm like, just put the taser away. They don't work that good half the time anyhow. Or I think it's like 60% or something.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the one thing my husband always joked about with me. He's like, she don't reach for her tools. She just goes hands on. I was like, you're right. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess with that stuff because that's what happens. You get something out and then you can't get it back in the holster because you can't
Right.
line it up right as everything's going like this and you're trying to shove something back in a holster and it's not going and you're just like, well, now I have a taser out that I can't do anything with.
Yeah. And I'd be lying if I said I never used a taser. I have, but like, again, it comes with the confidence of if I get to the point where I have to make a decision to use something else, it's likely because I'm not real confident because I know what my abilities are. But if you don't know what your abilities are, then you're just stuck in this area of no confidence or overconfidence, which might be worse, where you think that you can control somebody and you have absolutely no idea how to. So Yeah, I've definitely used tools. I just think that it's nice if you train, you kind of know better than when they're appropriate, when they're not.
Yeah, for sure. Well, tell us all real quick a little bit about Welcome to the Street, what the newsletter is, and then also the podcast and anything else you guys have going on at the moment.
Okay, yeah. So Welcome to the Street is we have two newsletter or one we have a newsletter that comes out twice a week. There we go. The first day is free. Sign up on the website, welcometothe street.com. And then the second day is a paid version, premium version. It's $4.99 a month. And in the paid version, you get a weekly like case law breakdown. So we typically have a scenario. It could be a traffic stop with a canine sniff. It could be a plain view type of thing or a use of force. And then we just give the scenario. We give an answer of what the reader thinks is right or wrong there, and then it breaks the answer down um, with case law, so to tell you how. And then on the website, all those case laws get uploaded every week into our training library. And we recently added a supervisor corner that gives, if you want to, if you're a first line supervisor and you want to go into the training or the supervisor corner, we have roll call worksheets and some other things that take what we put in the newsletter and we put it on like a worksheet so that they can kind of read off of it or structure their roll calls however they want. Because what we're finding is that a lot of agencies either don't have a roll call or they just don't have a structure of it. So a few of our readers are like that, and they've been using that. So that's the gist of it. But welcome to the street.com is the website, and it's pretty clear there. Then like what direction you can check out all the different tabs. The tab for the podcast is on there, and that's also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and whatnot. And that week to week we go through the newsletter and we talk about police news from the week before, line of duty deaths. We do a case law breakdown and talk a little bit about that or any legal updates. So if there's like some new Ninth Circuit ruling about cell phone tower dumps we talked about last week. So and we have some pretty cool guests on there. So it's week to week. Whoever wants to check that out can see who we're going to have on and give it a listen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just to clarify, because I haven't heard about you said it's called the Sergeant's Corner. That's a new thing.
Supervisor's Corner. Yeah.
Supervisor Corner, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so is that designed to be like information that they have so they can brief squad room if it's like during a squad meeting type thing?
Yes, if they want to. So we have it. So what we did was we took the case law scenario. There's other things in there too. There's sometimes there's a fitness tip or whatever. Like the week we had um well, it doesn't matter. So we based off the week kind of adjusts who our guest is and what kind of topics we're going to talk about. So once we put the newsletter out there, we'll take segments of the newsletter and we'll put them onto the website. Some of them are in the training library where you can get the case law updates or the like maybe there's a dry fire training tip or some sort of something you can do at the range, things like that. But the supervisor corner, then we took the same information that's in the newsletter for the case law breakdown and stuff, and we put it on a worksheet. So let's say you're a supervisor as three patrol officers that are coming in for your roll call, and you typically didn't used to do roll calls. Well, now you get our newsletter, it gives you access to the website, and you can use those worksheets as kind of a guide to for different topics. So, like a good topic would be if we broke down the case law on like last week we did Miranda, right? Miranda versus Arizona. So, but with that though, because everybody sort of knows that one, we gave a bunch of different. Well, what did the court say whenever it happened in the back of a police car or on the guy's front porch or in the police station? And it references cases out of different circuits or different states, or obviously Miranda's the Supreme Court case. Um, and then that way they could send roll call with this worksheet and say, hey guys, whenever you're questioning people, this is what the courts say in these particular circumstances, kind of thing. But it makes it like real super easy. Um, for them to do it without having to sit and research a bunch of that stuff first. So it's kind of a good way to like understand the case law in a couple of minutes instead of having to take an hour or more to sit and read through this long legal brief or whatever. We kind of do all that for you.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that idea of giving, I mean, obviously patrol officer or detective or whoever wants your info obviously can get to it. But I like the idea
Yeah,
of organizing it from the supervisor position so that they can give it out to whoever they supervise and essentially cut down the workload of like, here's the hot tips of what you need to know because they did it for you. Use this on your next stop. Or maybe they could even reach out to you and be like, hey, my officer had this example. Can you help me find the case law that applies? And you're probably like, yeah, we've talked about that before. Like, go here,
right.
type
Right.
of thing.
Yeah, and I can try to look it up if I don't already have it somewhere. But typically, we've done a lot of these so far, so typically it's kind of at my fingertips somewhere in our training library or the top of my head or in a previous newsletter. And the reason we set that up too, and this is just for whoever's listening and just wants to at least check the newsletter out first. The we had some supervisors email us and say, "Hey, we love your content and we actually read your newsletter at roll call." And I'm like, "Well, that's awesome." And then we started thinking, "Well, let's just make something for them then so that they can use it." And so yeah, we just throw it in there in a tab on the website called Supervisor Corner so that they can uh, kind of easily access the different topics. Now, I'll I'll say that we just launched the website, and what we're doing is as the newsletter comes out, we backfill the website. So you might click on it right now today, and there might only be like 4 or 5 weeks worth of stuff. Um, but as you continue to subscribe, you're going to keep getting the newsletter weekly, and then it'll be updated. More stuff will be put into the supervisor corner in the training library, like as we grow, basically. So
Right on.
don't freak out if you get on there and you're like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, there's not a lot of stuff here. Yeah, it's because we just started that particular part, but you still get the weekly newsletter every week and right to the inbox, whatever email you sign up with.
Right on. Okay, so what I'm hearing is subscribe to the newsletter because
Yes.
that will be first. That will be your inbox. You can always search through your own inbox for stuff. I'm always searching stuff from my inbox that I can't find because I can't remember where it went. But it'll pull up those keywords and you'll find the email if you're looking for something specific. And then
Yep.
general research will be available on the website, which is super cool.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Last question for you as we wrap this up. What would be your first three tips that comes to mind to help a police officer or patrol officer to be successful throughout their career?
Okay. Well, so when you start on the job, like create a space in the department or whatever where you build each other up and not tear each other down. That's a big one. We could probably talk about that forever too. But this isn't a claw your way to the top. Okay, this is a work together to accomplish the same goals. Um, so promote professionalism, which could be again just the education training, maybe some physical fitness stuff. All of that falls to me under the professionalism kind of umbrella. Um, and oh, I guess another good one would be just make sure you're doing the job for the right reasons always. So, um, come into the job with your why and make sure you try to stick to it. Or what I said at the very beginning, I think was the staying grounded in your purpose.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you for your time, Vince. It's been great chatting with you. So many great tidbits and nuggets from this episode. If anyone wants to contact you, get a hold of you, find you, where would be the best place for that?
So my email is on welcometothestreet.com, so they can go there, or I'm on Instagram. It's Vince_WTS, and I'm always trying to build that up too, so people can DM me directly or whatever. And then we also have the Facebook and Instagram just for Welcome to the Street. So type that in, you'll find us easily. But yeah, so my personal Instagram's that one, and then my email address is also on the website. So anyone that wants to connect or talk more about this kind of thing, just let me know. And I'm always up for networking. That's actually this week's newsletter is all about networking. So subscribe, you'll see it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll make sure I link all that in the show notes. And speaking of networking, I think you're inside of ADB Nation too, yeah?
Yeah, actually, or tomorrow night, which so next week's podcast that comes out Tuesday mornings at 6 a.m. on Spotify and all that. So on Tuesday morning when it gets released, our next episode is with Danny from ADB, Danny Me.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, good deal. I am working on a course for ADB, so I'm unofficially accepted an instructor position with them, and that course is forthcoming. So,
nice. Yeah, it's a great group. I actually have in this week's newsletter where we talk about networking, there's a link to join the nation as
yeah.
well. So yeah, we talk a lot about that. And just again, because I'm into the networking thing and I like how you can get right on their website and there's all these different categories you can pick and then talk about or get information from. So I post as much as I can in the case law one, and I'll get more frequent with that now that we're set up. But we were the last couple of weeks we were like really crunch time trying to get our website up. So yeah, you can find me in there as well. ADB
Cool.
Nation.
Yeah, I'll link that information below too. It's called A Different Breed Law Enforcement Training. It's an up and coming law enforcement training organization that's going to be a great thing to be a part of for anybody. Um, just trying to help raise the bar on law enforcement, like you said.
For
So,
sure.
yeah, cool. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. Hang out for me. Um, for anyone else interested in coming on the podcast or would just like to provide some feedback, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Please like, subscribe, rate the podcast. That way we can get it out to more people, share it with others. And as always, stay safe out there. I will see you on the next one.